This tutorial explores painting in colors in Illustrator. I chose a coloring page to trace from the Adobe Coloring Book website. This artist here, I'll leave a link to this website in the description of the video. This is a portion of the full coloring page that artist had created. I cropped it down to a smaller area to focus on. We'll place this image into Illustrator. If I go to my outline view, I can see there's no vectors. This is a raster-based image. And we'll use our Paintbrush tool and our Blob brush tool to trace over that original coloring book page and create our own vectors. We will mainly be focusing on the Paintbrush tool and the Blob brush tool. We'll talk about the Paintbrush tool options, brush panels and brush libraries, the Erasure Tool. We'll also talk about the difference between spot colors and process colors, swatch options, how to create tints of spot colors. We'll apply variable width profiles to our strokes. We will then open up our Adobe Color Themes panel and talk about how we can create our own color palettes and also add those palettes to our swatches panel. And then we'll talk about gradients, the gradient panel and the gradient libraries, and how we can make a custom gradient. Download the file from Canvas, open up Illustrator, then go to File, New. First, I'll change my unit of measurements to pixels, and we'll make it 2,550 pixels wide by 1,500 pixels high with one artboard. Click Create. And we'll save the document. Go to File, Save As. Navigate into your Adobe Design Suite folder. Make a new folder titled Lab 14-AI-Painting. Open that folder. We'll save this document as a .ai Adobe Illustrator format. I will highlight Untitled -1. Make sure you leave that file extension. Replace it with your last name. -14-AI-Painting. Click Save, and then OK. Now we can place the coloring page image into our document. So you have already downloaded that file from Canvas, and then we'll go up to File, Place. Locate the file ai-paintinglab.jpg. Select and click the Place button. I can see that image is now connected to my cursor. I'll go up into the upper left corner of my artboard and hold my mouse key down and drag to the lower right hand corner. Release the mouse. First off, we'll open up our Links panel. We can go to Window, Links. We only have one link in this file, the JPEG. So I can right-click on that link, or I can go to the hamburger drop-down menu and tell it to embed image. And now you'll see this additional icon on that links layer. So now when you close this document and you submit the file, it won't tell me that there's a missing image link in the document. This has now become flattened one piece of this Illustrator document. So no external file is necessary. If I did want to relink that image, I would have to navigate back to where that file is located, and then I'd be able to edit it. Okay, so we have one layer in the document right now. It says layer 1. I'll double click on this layer in the solid area off to the right, and that opens up the layer options box. Let's rename this layer Original. I'm also going to lock this layer because we'll use it for tracing, and we don't want to accidentally move it or delete it. And the last checkbox, dim images to 50%. This is helpful when you're tracing, so you can still see the object, but it makes it a little bit easier to see where your new vectors are located. Click OK. Now I can see that the original layer has that lock icon on there. Let's create a new layer. Down in the lower right corner of the Layers panel, you'll see a white box with a plus sign in there. That creates a new layer. You can rename that layer Flowers. And this will be the layer that we'll draw our vectors on. I have the correct layer selected that I want to start drawing on, so I'll go up to my Properties panel. I can see right now I have a white fill and a none applied on the stroke. Let's go to our Paintbrush tool, P on our keyboard, and I notice I have a white fill and none applied to my stroke. The Paintbrush tool is useful for painting free-form shapes and open paths. So I prefer to put a none on my fill and apply a stroke color. I'll click out to collapse that menu. And if we double click on the Paintbrush tool in the toolbar, it opens up the Paintbrush tool options box. We can change the fidelity of the paintbrush over to smooth. As you paint, it's going to drop down anchor points and paths. So by changing that more to smooth, it's going to help us create just smoother lines without as much effort. I'm also going to recommend clicking Keep Selected, and that should keep our appearance formatting options as we paint along. Click OK. And I can start painting. I'll just click and drag my mouse. Zoom in. And there you can see the green stem, my outline view, 2 anchor points and 1 path in the middle. I can increase the stroke a little bit. Now I can also change the brush style. You'll see in your appearance panel underneath you'll see brush, and right now it's set to a standard 5-point round brush. If I scroll down, I should have a couple options. There's a charcoal option. Let me make the point size a little bigger. But there's also an additional library. It's in the lower left corner of that brush menu. It looks like little books. It says Brush Library Menu. And you have libraries of arrows, artistic, borders, bristle, Lots of different great brushes. So you could try to open up an additional brush library. I can see the new library of brushes appear. So you can try out some different styles. And then you can also get to the brush libraries at the bottom of any of those brush panels that you have open. So as I click through here, it will actually be saving these brushes into my current library. So even if I'm just testing them out, I'll close that library. Now I have this path still selected, and I'm going to draw the leaf here. I want to be careful to not overlap this path because it'll think that I want to redraw it. So I'm going to start drawing my leaf over here just to be safe. And I saw the asterisk next to my cursor, so that indicates I'm about to create a new path. And I'm just dragging. I have not released my mouse. And I can change the point size. What it allows you to do in Illustrator also in the stroke point size, it gives you the additional 0.25, 0.5, and 0.75 stroke widths. And it kept my same brush style and weight. So I bet because I just changed the point size on that last one, this one is thinner, yes. So I'll just do this line in the middle. And I can select that last path by going back to my selection tool. Right now I have the middle selected, so I'll click that exterior path and then increase the size. Click out to deselect. Here is my vectors. And I could always hide the original layer to see how it looks. So that made all single open paths. I'll go back to my preview mode. Paintbrush tool. And continue on with the stems. I must have overlapped my paths because it just redrew it over there. So I can maybe just draw it again. And if that is problematic, I can always double click on the paintbrush tool in the toolbar and try to keep selected, uncheck that box, and see if it keeps our formatting. Looks like it did. I'm going to zoom in on one of the flowers. Another way to paint is with our Blob brush tool. If I hold down my paintbrush tool in the toolbar, I'll see Blob brush tool, or Shift plus B. The Blob brush tool paints a little bit differently. It paints with fill colors, not strokes. and it will merge and unite areas as you're painting along. It also uses a brush size. So I'm using my right bracket key on my keyboard to increase this size right now. I'll go up to my Properties tab, and I can see I have my same green stroke color and no fill. And this time I want to paint with a fill color. So I can swap out the colors, and I'll apply none to the stroke. And I'll start drawing this flower. So you'll see as I go along and I release my mouse, it didn't keep it selected. But if I hold my Control key on a PC or Command on a Mac, it allows you to temporarily switch to your selection tool to select an object but not really have to change your tool. Now you can see that it's one single object, except maybe these few dots I missed there. If I do a Command or Control Y, you can see it's a closed shape. If I want to start painting additional areas, I can just overlap the existing shape. And I think because we had just gone back to that Paintbrush tool options and took off Keep Selected, that's why this object keeps deselecting now. So if I double click the Blob Brush tool, we can change Keep Selected, Merge Only with Selections. That would probably help us a little bit. I'll change mine to Keep Selected, and I can also adjust the fidelity up to Smooth. I'll click OK. My object's deselected right now, so I'm going to hold my Control or Command key down and click that shape once to select it. And then I can start painting. And it's creating one unified shape. The other nice thing about the Blob Brush tool is, let's say I go too far and I want to erase something. I can go to my Eraser tool, Shift plus E, and I'm going to increase the size of that brush with my right bracket key, and I can just run it over the object and it will reconfigure the shape and just easily take out those areas you don't want in there. Save your document. And I want to be able to see some of the detail of the flower underneath. So I can hide the flower shape and then draw some of this detail in with my Paintbrush tool. So B will take you back to your Paintbrush tool. And an easy way to swap your colors is with this curved arrow above the fill and stroke thumbnails at the bottom of the toolbar. If I click that, it will swap the exact colors you have in there. So now I have none on the fill and my pink is on the stroke color. I like that color of pink I used, but maybe I want to use different shades of it to create the outline. So one option I have is to convert that color to a spot color. I'll open up my swatches panel and I can see the color that's selected. If I double click it, it opens the swatch options box. So here's the name of it right now. I could always change it. Underneath it, I see the color type for this color is currently set to a process color. So it's built up with the CMYK. Let's say I want to convert it to a spot color that can be easily recreated. It can be changed to different tints of the color very easily. And it will also follow a document. If I were to place this in, let's say, InDesign, it would bring that spot color along with it. So I converted this color type to spot color. I'll click OK. And if I wanted to get a different shade of that color, right now I'm in the swatches panel. And if I look at my dark pink color that I just converted, it now also has a white arrow in the lower right hand corner, and that indicates it's a spot color. Right now I'll click on the color mixer icon, and now you'll see that you have one single tint of color for that dark pink, 0 through 100. So I can bring it down to 50%. Click out. And I can start drawing in some of the detail. I can bring the rest of the shape back. But if I do a Command or Control Y, you can see the difference in the painting. One is painting with closed shape configuration, and the other one is creating open paths. I'll go back to my Properties panel and also to my Selection tool, V. Going to select the flower petal. And because I drew it with the Blob brush tool with the fill but no stroke, I can always add a stroke later. So I can go into my stroke colors and I'll choose the spot color I made. Go back to the color mixer and I can choose a lighter shade. I'll do my 50% that I had used before. Increase the stroke size so I can see it. I'm going to open up my brushes panel. Window, brushes. And I can see the available brushes right now in my current library. So I could try to choose a different style. I could also open up additional brush libraries down at the bottom. And then if I go back to my stroke panel, I can also change the variable width profile. So I could make it thinner in some areas and thicker than others, a little less uniform. I'll go back to my Blob brush tool and I'm going to make a little orange center of the flower. So I'll take my stroke color off, change my fill color to an orange, maybe decrease the size of my brush a little bit with the left bracket key, and I can start drawing in. Now right now it's on top of those other paths, so I can right click on it, arrange, and I'm going to choose send backwards. I don't want it to go all the way back because it'll go behind this pink shape. So I just want to go backwards each of those 3 times to get it behind those petals there. If I wanted to adjust my path at all, I could go to my white arrow, direct selection tool, A on your keyboard. I'll select a path, and what I'm going to do for this one, I'm going to grab that lower anchor point and drag it down so that these paths overlap a little bit better. And then also maybe bring the top one up a little bit. You could always change the curvature. If you just click on the path itself, you could drag that around. You could also use the direction handles to adjust. Save your document. Complete this flower using those same techniques. Remember to use your arrange to stack the objects in different stacking orders, and you can apply different brush strokes. You can use your eraser tool if you need to get rid of some areas, and also you can put strokes on those closed objects too. Save your document. Next, I'd like to talk about some other ways that we can choose colors. If we go up to our window menu at the top and down to color themes. There's actually a website, Adobe Color, that is pretty much the same thing as this panel, and you can do a lot with this free program that's available for anybody. So right now we are in the Create tab of Adobe Color Themes, and you can use the color wheel. So you set your main color, and then you would use the different color properties to create a color theme. You can also go to Explore, and you'll see color palettes that people have already created, and it's great inspiration. And you can use the search box to search for pretty much anything. Somebody has come up with a color theme for it, but I can type in flowers. And I've got all these beautiful color themes. So if I find one that I like, I can click the 3 dots underneath that color palette and tell it to add to swatches. I can also edit it, add it to my favorites, and go to the website and view it online. Okay, so we'll move on to this next flower. Now that I've added some additional colors to my swatch library, we're going to start on this next flower. And I also want to experiment with using some of the gradient options. So I will zoom in, and I might just close this Adobe Color Themes panel for right now. I'm going to my Blob brush tool, Shift plus the B key. Use my right bracket key to increase the size. And I can start drawing one of the petals. Okay, we have additional gradients that we can use. Right now I see I have 3 available in my swatches panel, and I can use those. But down at the lower left corner of the swatches panel, you'll see the Swatch Libraries menu. If I open that, you'll see gradients. And then there's all different kinds of gradients in here. Seasons. And then I can go to my gradient panel, which is located in the Properties panel right now. I see this in the middle of that Properties tab. And we can apply either linear, radial, or freeform gradients. As I click through these different gradients, they're being added up in my swatches panel. Now, if I wanted to create a custom gradient, what I can do is I'll change the colors in my gradient panel. Adjust your gradient colors. I can change the opacity. And now I've made a custom gradient, and if I want to save that gradient into my swatches to apply it to other objects, I can go up to my selection tool, V. I can close my gradient panel, and in my swatches panel I can go to the hamburger menu, New Swatch, and you can rename it. Click OK, and now I see that new gradient swatch has been applied to my swatches panel. So I'll continue drawing the rest of the flower. I'll go back to my Blob brush tool, and I want to deselect this object, so I can click out by temporarily holding down my Control key on a PC, Command on a Mac, click out, and now I can start drawing. And you'll see it's now drawing with that gradient. I can always hide the original layer, see how it looks. And I like the blending of the opacities on the gradients together. Continue drawing your flower petals. And don't forget to save your document as you go along. Continue on with painting. using your Paintbrush tool or your Blob brush tool. Experiment with using different brush styles, different colors, gradients, and also remember that your image should work alone without that original image there in the end. So every once in a while, hide that original layer, check out your vectors, and save often. The rest of this video is silent with no talking, but you can follow along to see how I painted this image. The same tools were used throughout: the Paintbrush tool, Blob brush tool. Submit just this AI file when the lab is completed. And thank you for watching.